Mission by grateful and loving Coast Guard, we are reading you loud and clear.
Welcome to Sea Views, and I'm Julia Gosling, and I'm joined today with my new co-host today, which is Dave Watkins, also from CHIRP, because Adam's away. Welcome, Dave. Lovely to see you.
It's great to be part of this team. It's my first time doing this podcast, and I'm really excited. And thank you for asking me. And what better two people can we have than Captain Samarth, a serving captain, and a friend of mine, Dr Rachel Glynn-Williams. So looking really forward to getting into some nice discussions. Well, perhaps not nice, but interesting discussions.
So welcome, Captain Samarth, and also Rachel. We are going to be talking about the serious issues facing seafarers, many seafarers at the moment around the world. There's very difficult conditions for people in the Strait of Hormuz, but these areas of conflict are happening, around the world in different points. And so this is an issue for seafarers doing their job, but having some very stressful times at the moment. And so we thought it would be really helpful to have a look at this from the point of view of yourself, Dr. Rachel Glynn-Williams. You are a clinical psychologist and you understand what happens to the mind when we suffer trauma and the effects of that and what we can do, maybe. And you, Captain Samarth, I'm so pleased you joined us because you are a real seafarer. You are on a ship and you know what real life is like out there. So that's what we're going to cover today. And I think maybe if we could pitch in right away with your view, Captain, because you are at sea, you're managing people, you've been in all these different kinds of situations, I imagine, through your career. Could you sort of paint us a picture about what it's like to be, stressed on board, or what causes some of these things at sea?
So basically, the stress out at sea starts with isolation because you are away from home and you cannot get back home in an emergency. No matter what happens at home, you will not be able to get back. When you're part of a crew, and if you're if you're a key crew member who's part of the minimum safe manning, you cannot leave the ship unless you're suitably relieved. So in most countries, that means your reliever has to have a visa and then come on board. That's not going to happen overnight. So in case there is a domestic emergency or whatever kind of a problem at home, you will not be able to get back within a couple of weeks at times. And if you're in the middle of the Pacific, then you might not get home for a month or more. So that is one part of it, the isolation, that feeling of
Yes.
helplessness when you're out at sea. For anything that happens back home, you cannot be there for your family. That is how it all starts. That is the second part of it. When a ship sails out from port, you are on your own. No matter what kind of a problem that you run into, whether it be a fire, a breakdown, a mechanical problem, an injury, an illness, you are self-sustained. There is no outside help coming in. You have to manage the situation until you get to a port and you can get help. And that can take time. The second is the discipline and the weather aspects of it. It is a hazardous environment. Everything that we do, we are doing it in a hazardous environment, and it is there 24/7. There is no respite from it. And then there are frequent port calls, uncertain hours of work. Like for me personally, my time of sleep depends on the time of tide at Bremen. Sometimes I'm working days, sometimes I'm working nights. So my biological clock doesn't know what to do. And it never does cope up. Because I might be working 2 nights in a row and then 2 days in a row and then a night and then 2 days. So it's switching all the time. So that does have a psychological impact, a physiological impact, and so many other problems that come up with it. And then it is particularly with multinational crew, sometimes what happens is you are not able to make the kind of friends that you would in any other environment ashore. There is nobody whom you can speak openly to. There's nobody you can confide in. Everyone seems to be judging you, particularly if you're new at sea and you're relatively junior. You might not have people whom you can talk to about your feelings. And that, particularly in the newer generation, has a very profound effect.
Yeah, it's isolation, loneliness. You can't go home and decompress, can you? I mean, what about in terms of extreme circumstances? You know, there are seafarers at the moment. I imagine some seafarers contact you, Captain. You know, that what kind of situation are they saying they're struggling with? That they can't necessarily go on deck. There could be risky. It could be risky to go outside, do activities. How you know, what are people saying to you who've contacted you?
Now, Julia, the real picture is very, very different from what most people have in mind. It is not just the uncertainty of not being able to go out on deck and stuff like that. You have planned for a certain voyage. You have loaded, you've sailed out. Now, suddenly you're at anchor, you have no place to go. There is uncertainty. You have limited stocks of food, water, and fuel. You do not know how long those stocks are going to last or how long you're going to stay at anchor before you can proceed with your voyage. You start rationing down your food, trying to make it last longer. You're cutting down on water supply. You're cutting down to water maybe 1 hour a day, and then you come down to a bucket a day, and then half a bucket a day, and then you have to decide whether you drink or you flush.
Oh, yeah, it's
Okay?
not good.
You have provisions for a certain voyage. You know your provisions are going to last you for a month, maybe a month and a half. Okay, now you're at anchor for 6 weeks. You would have run out of provisions if you had not started rationing from day one. The same with fuel. You have fuel for the voyage. If you're at anchor, you're not running your main engine, but your generators are running and they're drinking fuel. You want to cut down as much ancillaries as you can. Try and save fuel because running out of fuel mid-voyage, that is not an option at all. So the uncertainty is what really, really gets to you. Other than that, you're hearing conflicting reports. In today's day, social media is everywhere. You're hearing reports about fake reports about bombings, attacks, devastation. You don't know what's true, what's not. You don't know what's going to happen. That uncertainty is what really, really gets to you. People are not able to sleep. People are not able to perform. People have panic attacks. And then you hear confirmed reports of vessels being bombed. And then you're sitting on a gas tanker or an oil tanker. And you know that if something strikes this thing, it's just going to blow. There's nothing you can do about it. You're a sitting duck. So that is actually the definition of extreme pressure.
It's and it's happening to a lot of seafarers at the moment, isn't it? Through no fault of their own, with no power.
There are 20,000 seafarers still stuck in the Persian Gulf. 20,000.
Yeah.
It's shocking. What about I mean, obviously we've talked about the Strait of Hormuz because it's very topical at the moment, but there's always been areas of conflict, whether they're necessarily defined a formal conflict zone or not. We also know that there are regular piracy attacks in certain waters, and all of this must be potentially, those are very sort of traumatic incidents for people if it happens to them, or just the threat of it. Dave, you know a little bit about that from your time as a seafarer, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I was pirated in the early 90s. And I have to admit, I suppose back in that day, we weren't so open with our feelings as we are now. Well, hopefully we're getting better at it. But I do vividly remember the aftermath of the pirate attack, which we successfully chased off the pirates, 9 pirates with machetes, and our crew and the officers, we all set to get them off. But afterwards, it left. I have to admit, there was a very strong period of silence with everybody. Everyone was reflecting, and it took probably a couple of days. But the company provided the support for us and met us when we got to our port. But it did affect people more than we thought it would. And it's certainly, I can vividly remember it. So that's going back over 30 years. And I remember it vividly. And so it has left a bit of a legacy on me mentally as well.
Yeah, yeah. And
There's something I
Captain,
want to put in what David just said.
Yes.
Post-incident decompression. This is something we all overlook. There are a lot of times when people cope through just on sheer adrenaline when an incident is ongoing. But as soon as that pressure comes off, this pent-up stress that you have been put through, that shows up in all kinds of weird ways. And we actually ignore that, or we overlook it a lot.
Yeah, that's right, Captain. You're spot on there.
It's a really good point how it comes out afterwards. And I think that's a natural point to talk to you, Rachel, with your clinical psychologist perspective, because you see some of those effects, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really hard, Captain, now to be making a contribution without actually acknowledging completely everything that you said and everything that you're going through, the crews are going through, and the other 2,000 vessels that are out there. It's incredible, the amount of pressure, the amount of uncertainty that multiple crew are under right now, and obviously thinking about them, and hopefully this situation will ease and start to shift as soon as possible. I think, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been working as a clinical psychologist for 26 years now, and I've worked a lot of that time I've been working with people who have experienced trauma of various sorts. And in the last sort of 6, 7, 8 years, I've been working in the maritime industry, supporting people who have been through trauma at sea or been impacted by incidents at sea. And it's I recognise what you're saying there, Captain, about the adrenaline as the situation continues, as it's ongoing. It's the adrenaline, it's the cortisol that will keep you going. It'll keep you doing the thing that's necessary. And that's our fight flight kind of mechanism, that thing that just keeps things moving, keeps us doing the things that helps the situation and get people to get through it. But it is that it's when things resolve, that can be when finally that system is allowed to reset, and that adrenaline system can stand down, and it's that point where the thoughts, the evaluations, the beliefs that have been kept at bay all that time because they're just not useful, can sort of come forward, and people start then trying to absorb, process what's been going on, and this is a very active. It's a very can be very emotional part of the process, and it can feel really weird. It can feel scary when you're having memories of things, and you're feeling the pressure to talk about it, or you're stepping back. You're having all these different ways of acting, and it can feel a bit mad, a bit unusual, but actually those are what we would recognise as the essential parts of an alarm system resetting itself. And it is something that is important to make space for. In the ideal situation, we would be looking at not necessarily rushing crew back off home in the within hours of a situation resolving, but just having a bit of time just for that process to see its way through, and to get that kind of mutual support. This won't happen again. This opportunity, if you like, to sit with people who have been through very similar things to yourself, have got through, have survived very similar, difficult, traumatic events, and the value of just sitting together, not necessarily talking a lot about it. It's not necessary to talk it through, to have a big debrief. Sometimes that can be really quite harmful, in fact, if it's enforced, but just an opportunity for people to share space and to share the opportunity to talk, to just eyeball each other, just to look at each other and just acknowledge what's gone on. Just whilst, people are finding a sense of safety again.
Yeah. So that sort of decompressing with your colleagues, as it were, is an important part of it. Do you have any reflections on that, Captain or Dave?
I personally think it's a vital component in recovery, and not everyone will accept it, but I do like to believe that most companies would like to offer it, to bring in third parties to come and assess the crew, to work with them, just to provide that listening ear to them, so that they've got the opportunity to offload their concerns if something traumatic has taken place.
I think I mean I know I'm not a seafarer. I worked for the Coast Guard for 18 years, and I was in the press office, and so I wasn't frontline, but I did deal with some really unpleasant, difficult incidents. And I remember one time it was the cockle pickers incident, and 22 workers died that day out in the water, and I was on duty, and it was horrible. As we're going through the day, we're just getting more and more a higher body count. It was really one of the worst days I've ever had at work ever. And it was just afterwards, you're just with your colleagues, you're not necessarily pouring your heart out, but there is something comforting about being with the people who know what's been happening. And there is something really unique about that.
I guess I would add that actually that it can be the most powerful type of support that available to crews, to people, to staff teams, to communities after an event. It's the support from one another. It's that peer support, which is crucial. I think the most powerful support and changes can come in, as Captain says, in that immediate time after an incident is resolving, and it is just being together and acknowledging the validity and the truth of what's happening. Sometimes,
what about people that are not coping, or how do we look out for that? Like, what would you maybe see as the signs of somebody not coping very well after that?
if we can think about the sort of different phases, really, I guess Captain would be able to talk about the kind of signs and sort of difficulties people might be showing on board, currently whilst things are still ongoing, and then there's the sort of signs a little bit further down the line. So whilst it's still occurring, and perhaps in the early, in those early moments afterwards, it's very, very normal. It can be very uncomfortable, but it's very normal to experience, sort of a level of, hypervigilance, to find it difficult to sleep, to be restless, to find your mind returning to some of the difficult times and replaying them. It's almost, it can feel, why is my mind doing this to me? Why am I feeling tortured by my own mind? But actually, it's a way of our minds just trying to make sense of something that doesn't naturally have a place to sit in the warehouse of our minds. And so thinking about it is a way of processing it. And so some of those aren't necessarily, they're not pathological, they're not abnormal, but it's part of that adrenaline fight or flight sort of mechanism that is usually helps us find an exit, usually helps us find a way of tackling it head on, the stressor. But obviously there's certain stressors, like the ones we're talking about now, that fight or flight mechanism is thwarted. And so
Yes.
there isn't an exit, there isn't a way of actively intervening in the situation that's causing it in order to bring it to a close. So it's living with that sustained adrenaline system, which can show itself in terms of that restlessness and sleeplessness, and sometimes a bit of irritation on board as well. I should imagine that there's lots of times when people are just getting a bit angry with each other. There's a few outbursts now and again, and people keeping themselves to themselves just to try and manage how they're feeling.
Yeah, I can imagine that's quite a normal thing if they're not feeling very good about what's happened. I mean, maybe from the point of view of you, Captain Samarth, you've seen, how do you look out for things like that? How do you recognize that?
Okay. First off, most important, the leadership sets the climate. The leadership sets even the psychological climates. How the captain and the senior officers react to any particular situation percolates down the ranks. So that is extremely important, not to show panic at all. The second, then there are various signs which we need to watch out for. One, any disturbance in food patterns. Someone loses appetite, someone goes into binge eating, sudden withdrawal or silence, or aggression, or fatalist statements like, what's the point in this? And then problem sleeping. You watch out for all these kind of stuffs on a daily basis. Make sure that if somebody is acting out of the ordinary, you go to him, you speak, you try and find out if there's something bothering him. Because these things have a tendency to grow below the surface. And once they like spiral out of control, then you have like a full-blown anxiety attack or a panic attack on your hand. And then it becomes really difficult to control. So yeah, these are things, I mean, these are signs that we watch out for.
Yeah, I totally endorse that, Captain. And I would say, and you've hit the nail, I think, on the head there, good communications, being present on board the ship as the master, being seen as the leader and explaining things in a clear, concise way to everybody, in a fair way and a consistent way, will engender that sort of trust, and in lots of ways it will help to diffuse situations on board. If people can see you acting openly, honestly, transparently, and telling them what you know, I think that there's an excellent point you made there about those areas where people might not be coping, but you're actually there seeing it and responding to it.
They're all great points, and I think that alongside that calm, effective leadership and having that solid sort of calming presence, sort of being open to the idea that people are experiencing distress, they're disconnected from things, and I guess we're talking about psychological safety, is demonstrating that it's okay to have these emotions, and that everyone's learning how to deal with this situation. And again, it's the leadership that kind of sets that tone and gives those permissions.
May I? One very effective technique which I have found to deal with this kind is to pair people off. If I find somebody who's overly anxious or overly excitable, I pair him off with a senior's most stable crew member. Like you have an officer on the watch, you have a able seaman on watch. You could find that one guy is new and angsty, and the other guy is like old and reliable. I'll try and pair these two together on the same watch. The same with an engineer on watch and a motorman on watch. I try and keep opposites together so they have a calming influence on each other. Experience does rub off on crew members. So that is how you form your peer groups. And again, it's leadership and management which helps identify and put these the correct combinations together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could
A
see that
buddy
being really
system.
helpful.
It's really good.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
wonder what about solutions? Because you're on a ship, you can't go to the pub, you can't go home to your family, you can't go and get counselling physically, as it were. What kind of things can you literally do on the ship? What would you recommend, and what have you put in place at times, Samarth?
Okay. I have a formula for this, which I give out to all the youngsters. I call it mental. And maybe, Rachel, you'll be able to use this sometime. Okay.
Mhm.
Mental. M stands for meditation. You want to clear your mind and concentrate your thoughts. Okay. E is for exercise, any kind of physical exercise. You could walk, you could gym, you could run, you could cycle, you could do calisthenics, yoga, anything, any form of exercise. Okay. N, learn to say no. Do not blindly accept anything that people tell you. See whether it is good for you long term or not. Refuse. Learn to say no. T is talk. Talk to your seniors, talk to your juniors, talk to your friends, talk to your family, talk to your children. Talk. Talking solves 99% of all problems. A, accept. There are things which you can change them. There are things which are beyond your control. Accept them. And lastly, L is for laugh. Humor is the best medicine.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
So
totally
this,
agree.
I
Good
mean,
one.
this is something which I've been telling all the youngsters, ways to cope with emotional stress. This works.
Yeah. I mean, I know you like the exercise. You're very keen on the exercise thing, and you recognize how good that is for you when you're at sea, don't you, Samarth? So do you encourage that in the people that serve with you and they benefit from it?
Yes, actually, every third post of mine is a workout post, and my workout posts do not run. But I still insist on keeping them there because that makes me who I am. Right? So,
Yeah.
yes, I pay a lot of emphasis on the workout part of it or on physical exercise part of it. I put a great deal of importance to it. And I hope that I can influence others to just accept as much, because a lot of my crew members are impressed by me. If I'm in my 50s and I'm able to do stuff which they cannot in their 20s, then they do feel motivated to try.
I was thinking about the real life situation. Do most ships have gyms of any reasonable size ship, Samarth?
Yes, most ships do have gyms. Pretty much all of them do. The kind of equipment that you have depends company to company, owner to owner, but pretty much all ships have some kind of gym on board.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's important at the moment for anyone that can't get out and about on the deck as much as usual. I mean, there must be quite good evidence now, isn't there, Rachel, about the benefit of it on mood and all sorts of things?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's one of those, essential kind of parts of what we know keeps us humans well and active and engaged, and moving towards our kind of preferred way of, turning up each day. I think exercise is so good for our cardiovascular health, our immune system, and I think at particular times of stress, it's an excellent way of discharging some of that pent up frustration. There's a number of different things that people can turn towards despite these, very restricted situations. But exercise can be a key part of that. It reduces that emotional labour in the workplace, which brings authenticity and connection and increased well-being if people can just express themselves through movement. Brilliant.
Very good point, Rachel. I would also like to just emphasize a little bit on the routine, maintaining, regular routine habits. I think that's a very important thing to maintain and don't lose control of. Don't go wandering off. Oh, I can't be bothered to do this. Keep that routine going, especially especially for safety critical work that you have to perform. So, carry it out with enthusiasm and purpose and focus. So,
I got a fancy word for that. Structure in a chaotic environment. You need structure, you need predictability and routines.
One of the things that we know from sort of global and various difficult circumstances, disasters, tragedies, moments of a lot of change or of none, is that efficacy, feeling as if there's a purpose. There's even if that purpose has gone from the bigger picture to something more close by. It's having that shared sense of purpose, that efficacy, that idea that we can do something, and that there's a kind of a scaffold around you in terms of that routine. So sticking with your normal duties as much as possible. How you how you manage yourself in the in your downtime. It's having those kind of recognized touch points still. When things are weird and unpredictable around you, it's having those kind of those micro moments when actually this feels just a little bit familiar. And
yes.
there's a pattern to things can be really, really helpful at times when things are changing or frustratingly not changing.
Rachel, I have a beef with social media and internet. Okay, now it's a double-edged sword for sure. Okay, in one way, it is excellent keeping in touch with the family, and it actually alleviates stress. The second way, I mean, we actually find guys who are addicted to the internet. We are not forming the cohesive social bonds that we used to form on board ships. As Dave, you would remember, I mean, you would have coffee together, people would sit together, have laugh and crack jokes and stuff like that. You would watch movies or series together in the smoke rooms later on in the evening. Oh yeah, there used to be alcohol too, which is not there anymore and stuff. So you're not forming those kind of cohesive bonds. Right now, as soon as you finish work, every guy is down in his own cabin on his own phone or a laptop, and he's like on social media or Netflix or whatever, doom scrolling. And we are not forming the kind of cohesive bonds between fellow crew members as we used to before. And that, I think, does have a very serious impact on the mental stress levels on board. You are not, you do not have the kind of friendship that we did to be able to share your feelings with a person.
Absolutely, and that is problematic because I guess we know that when internet is a problem, that certainly the cadets, the sort of younger seafarers, are less happy to go on board those vessels and would struggle soonest perhaps. But equally, the internet can bring all kinds of difficult challenges. Where people can get, as you say, hooked into being in their own company, or they can get hooked on I don't know, gambling or trading, and that can bring particular problems for some.
Now, most of those sites are already banned by the ship internet providers. You cannot access such sites.
It's good that that's happening. I don't think it's been happening everywhere, but I think certainly it's that managed, that sort of curated intranet that some companies can provide can help contain some of these issues. I think one of the great pieces of work that ISWAN have done is that Social Interaction Matters project that shows the pivotal power of social interaction and recognizing that is a huge influence in well-being, and they come up with some ideas about how to coax people out of their individual sort of cabins, and they talk about having a social ambassador, so someone on board who's the kind of, I don't know, the entertainment manager, I guess. It's not going to solve all the difficulties, and people will still want that time with their Netflix,
It's a great point about the social media being a double-edged sword, though, isn't it? Because you could be connected. They think they're connected with all these thousands of people, but yet still isolated. Could you? Are you allowed to just turn the Wi-Fi off, Captain? Well, what would happen? Would there be a riot?
I don't have to turn it off. Sometimes it turns off by itself.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm gonna say that to my 15-year-old when I want to turn it off. I say, nope, it's just gone off.
No, it actually does, and I have a good crew on board, and yeah. So I would not have a ride in my hands, but I would have people coming up. Sir, ship chat's not working. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, let me check. That kind of stuff. It happens.
I would just like to add that, I accept, in my days that we used to have a bar, and you can still have a bar, but you don't have to have alcohol in the bar. But I think after dinner time in particular is a really great opportunity for everyone to get properly cleaned up and in their uniform, and then afterwards because what we used to do is play some games as well with coffee and different types of teas. We could bring in different types of coffees where we'd sit around. So we wouldn't leave, and it would be, there'd be a little bit of pressure to stay unless you've got to get to bed, because you're on watch soon. But just that after dinner and during the dinner time to mix and discuss the events of the day, some of your input from your families, and share it amongst each other, I think is a very, very powerful force, and it backs up what Iswan, a great survey the SIM, found. And I think we should put a bit more emphasis on that, because that is a great area for finding out where some people might not be coping. You can see the visible signs with people who have gone very silent, withdrawn, not eating properly. And so it's a good indicator. But I think we should give more effort to that.
There's a very big difference between your time and now, David. And that big difference is nobody ever told us that we needed to sleep 8 hours a day. We really thought it was not important and never really bothered us. But now the youngsters, they've been told they need 8 hours of sleep. And they're like, oh, shit, it's going to eat into my sleeping time. I can't do this. All right. I mean, you need to relax your mind. You don't need to go to bed and sleep for 8 hours. But
yes, I totally agree. You don't have to sleep. It's
and
just
most of the time, if there's a structured activity, then you will have people against it, and they're like, no. And so I have a little different way of dealing with it. I watch movies or series in the evening, and I make the popcorn. Okay, so this is like 7:30 to 9 every evening. I mean, if we watch a movie, then we watch for 1.5 hours, and then the next day for 1.5 hours, we continue the same one over and over again and stuff. And a few people turn up, so that's okay. I encourage more and more to come up, and the enticement is popcorn or soda, whatever they want is on the house. I do that. The second part of it is I actually involve people in making my videos. So, I mean, let's say we're going to have a dance video or something of that sort. So we're going to have dance practice in the evening. So all volunteers who want to be in the video can come and do that. So a lot of people do turn up for that kind of stuff. So
I love them.
Whatever works. So many things we can.
Yeah, it's fun. I think it's good. I love those ones when you get your crew involved. They're really funny. So yeah, I mean, I know we can't go on board and help a seafarer directly on shore. We can't. Is there anything else we can add? Any other tips or advice or anything anyone would like to say as we finish off?
I'd just like to ask Captain Samarth, are your crew aware of the support, the emotional support that is available globally? For instance, Befrienders Worldwide, ISWAN, Mission to Seafarers, Sailor Society, Stella Maris, and there are others, of course. But are they aware of these support charities?
Yes, they are. Our company very actively pushes IS1. They have their own helpline as well, but our company actually very heavily endorses IS1. And the Wellness at Sea app is also pretty fairly prevalent. So those two, I
Brilliant.
mean, everybody is aware of.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Great.
Your ship sounds like a good one to serve on, Captain Samarth.
I have a brilliant team, yes. I
Yeah.
mean, most of these
Yeah.
guys have been with me for like 20 years or so. A lot of guys. I mean, my chief engineer has been with me since he was fourth engineer. My bosun has been with me since he was a training OS. So
Excellent. And yeah, you've got a really great team, which makes life so much better,
this
doesn't it?
is actually my family, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. That's very rare, Captain, to have that continuity. That's really rare. That's fantastic, though.
Yeah. You built a great team. You know, that's excellent. Would you like to add anything, Rachel? Is there anything else you'd like to say?
I guess just having some thoughts about time that's coming when hopefully this situation will settle down, and people will be able to get home. Quietness hasn't meant calm and safety for a little while. It's been reprogrammed perhaps for some that quiet is not good. Quiet means you've got to stay extra alert. So it's going to take a little while to reset that. And then just to not be too concerned if in those few weeks that things are not feeling quite as they should. I guess if that there are some things to look out for if people do need some extra support. Usually we start looking out for things like bad dreams, sudden intrusive thoughts. If those are occurring, some weeks down the line, if you're finding it difficult to do certain things, if you're avoiding certain things, if you're finding it difficult to have conversations, if you're still feeling very jumpy and hyper alert and it's hard to sleep, or it just feels as if there's a sort of a fog on things. There's just a kind of a lower mood and your outlook isn't so great. Um, or if someone else is having some difficulties with your behaviour, if they're telling you that you're being a bit too narky, a bit too aggressive, or a bit too something or other, then and it's out of character, I guess those are the kinds of things that might suggest that perhaps you need to get some support. And again, these things aren't unusual, but they do respond really well to, again, that social support, that networks, that sharing your concerns is still crucial at this point. And for those whose difficulties might start to align with things like post-traumatic stress disorder or panic, or low mood and depression, there are some really good, often very brief psychological support systems, therapies that can really make a difference. So this, even if you are feeling a little bit burdened by the legacy of what you're going through right now, it still doesn't mean that this is your life now. This isn't how it's going to stay. This is about the environment you're in. It's about what's happening to you. It's not about what's wrong with you. And you just need, the right things around you again, and things should move on. And by far the majority of people in different circumstances who go through traumatic experiences, the most common recovery is a good one. But for those who struggle, there is some really good effective support. So please do reach out.
Excellent words.
One closing point I just want to put in. Okay. We're talking about putting Band-Aid on a wound. What we actually need to talk about is to remove the hazard. We are all sitting here talking about mental health and stress because ships are being targeted. Why are ships being targeted? Just because they're a soft target? We allowed this to happen. Right back in 2022, when the Russia-Ukraine conflict started, we allowed ships to be targeted. Nobody said anything about it. The ship is carrying the crew of one nationality. The ship owner is of a second nationality. The cargo interest is of a third nationality. The management is of a fourth nationality. In fact, you can have 8 different nationalities of crew on the ship. Why is the ship being targeted? Why can we not designate all ships as international assets and all countries together take responsibility for protecting those assets? If this were to take place, I've been saying this, but my voice is small and I'm not heard. So that's why I want to put it across on as many different platforms as I can. Ships should be declared as international assets, and targeting of civilian transport should be abhorred by all nations together.
Hear, hear.
Here, here. Yeah, excellent point, Captain Samarth. And you know, CHIRP Maritime will help promote that idea, and wherever we can. I fully endorse it. You know, as a seafarer myself, yeah, I think it's absolutely
because the
criminal.
first principle of risk management is to remove the hazard.
Yeah.
If we do not remove the hazard, we're just putting band-aids on whatever there is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here. I totally accept that. Well, I hope we do get the message out a bit more, and I hope it's of interest. And you know, all we can do is as we said earlier, you know, just as well hope that the situation eases for everyone as soon as possible. And when we finish the Sea Views episodes, I always joke that we're leaving the bridge, but it's quite funny because when you go, you're probably going to be going to the bridge. Is that right?
Yeah. I'm just about to sail out another 30 minutes or so with dot on.
Oh, okay. That's so funny. I'm so glad that you could join us, and Rachel as well. I think it's been really useful to talk about this. It's a serious subject, but it's very interesting what we've covered. And I'm really grateful. Thank you so much.
Fishing vessel Grateful and Labrador Coast Guard, we are reading you out and clear.